Hello and welcome to our third virtual launch event. We were very happy to host our first in-person launch since 2019 for this issue in November. However, we missed our virtual launches because they allowed us to celebrate and interact with our international audience and contributors. We're beyond thrilled to be celebrating the launch of our latest release, issue 23. The prose, poetry, and art of San 23 are all about coping. From escapism to rituals, dreams, obsessions, and prayers. We can't wait for you to read all the original, diverse, raw, and wonderfully weird pieces in its pages. Let's get started with San Journal's managing editor, Ruby Mason, introducing our first reading of the launch, a short presentation by our cover artist, Larissa Fantini. Then we'll have Ashley Moore, San's editor-in-chief, introducing fiction writer, Miriam McEwen.
Hi everyone, I'm Ruby Mason, the managing editor of San Journal here in Berlin, and I'm delighted to be introducing Larissa Barddal Fantini, our San 23 cover artist, on behalf of the San team and our former art editor, Ruhi Palmer Amin, who selected Larissa's work for this issue back in 2021. Larissa is a writer, artist, and teacher based in Brazil whose work has been exhibited in Germany, France, Sweden, and Brazil, and whose work explores themes including politics, popular culture, the domestic sphere, and intimacy, among other things. And she's co-creator of the independent art space 75 Square Meters, as well as co-founder of the weekly poetry newsletter Poetry Trapper Keeper, alongside fellow San 23 contributor Kelly Mullins. I'll let Larissa speak about her work in her own words in just a second, but first I'd just like to say why we were so drawn to it for the cover of San 23. If you've seen the cover of San 23, you'll see how vivid and dynamic Larissa's work is, and can probably understand how much we were struck by it when we saw it in our submissions pile. Beyond that, we also found that the work really just struck a chord with us through the lockdown of 2021 as we made this issue over Zoom and email in our homes, and yeah, really chime with this theme of coping that has emerged from the work of San 23. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Larissa. If you haven't done so already, make sure to get your copy of San 23 with incredible cover art by Larissa Barddal Fantini. Thanks very much.
I'm Larissa. I'm an artist from Brazil. That's me. That's me. That's also me. My art is on the cover of San Journal's 23rd issue on coping. The cover artwork is a digital painting of a photo of a sculpture that I made. The title of the work, Para não dizer que não esculpi as flores, is a direct reference to the Brazilian song Para não dizer que não falei das flores. The song, which was recorded and performed during the dictatorship in Brazil, was censored. It was seen by the government of the time as a call to arms, asking people to go to the streets, and yet the title of it, So You Cannot Say I Didn't Sing About the Flowers. The song, by Geraldo Vandré, was an anthem to student protesters and labor rights activists. My mother tells me of the times that she went to the street to march and demand direct elections, and how they would sing that song, how the students would sing that song, marching and singing hand in hand, the song that the government didn't want the people to hear.
Caminhando e cantando e seguindo a canção, somos todos iguais, braços dados.
To sing about flowers in times of darkness is like saying that it is dark, but I still sing. As the pandemic carried on and our government seemed more and more fascist every single day, I felt completely powerless. I was stuck at home. I couldn't do anything. Couldn't make anything. when I was an art teacher and my students would come up to me and say, I just don't know what to make, I don't know what to do, I'd say, go paint some flowers. And they always thought I was joking, but I wasn't. I think that painting and sculpting and making flowers is a genuine way of creating something. But also, flowers are political. To state that the flowers are there, even in the worst of times when there is no sunlight or water or nurture for them to grow, how they can thrive, how they can annoy governments and grow through cracks. So I went back to my flowers. So I collect these flowers in paintings, in vases, on my fridge, on my hip. Anthuriums are resilient, and though some people say they're hard to take care of, none of mine have ever died. I began sculpting these little foam flowers, and then they took over my life. My work often consists of dismembered body parts, the artist scattered through the space, hands, legs, lips. The cover artwork comes from these obsessions, the flowers growing and growing from unlikely sources, the teeth embedded on its very foundation. But I also think there is humor in the absurd, and there's humor in the impossible. And to sculpt flowers when there's nothing else you can do, when you can't think of anything else you can make, is absolutely a coping mechanism. I was so honored to find out that the artwork that I had made as a coping mechanism, listening to a song that was a coping mechanism for so many people, that work was chosen as the image for the cover of Sand Journal's issue on coping. I'm glad you're all here tonight. Thank you very much. And I hope you remember to never forget to speak about the flowers.
Thank you so much for that moving presentation, Larissa. I'm Ashley Moore, Sand's editor-in-chief and senior fiction editor. It is now my pleasure to introduce Miriam McEwen, who will be reading from her flash fiction piece, We Are Not Love Machines. Miriam McEwen writes about disability and bodily autonomy. She holds an MFA in writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts, and she's an associate editor at the South Carolina Review and a co-editor for The Swamp. Miriam's work has appeared or is forthcoming in Under the Gum Tree, Madcap Review, and South Carolina Review, among others. She currently lives in the foothills of South Carolina, and you can find her on Instagram at Miriam McEwen. When I first saw Miriam's work in the submissions pile, I was immediately drawn in by the strength of the voice and the complex way in which she interweaves seemingly contradictory emotions into her work. In this piece, We Are Not Love Machines, the distance created by the narrator's casual cynicism, the nonchalant humor, and the use of the second person subvert our expectations by heightening the sense of danger and connecting readers even more deeply to the protagonist's situation. When we begin reading, we might be laughing along with the narrator uncomfortably, and by the end of the piece, we are so close to the narrator's emotions that we allow ourselves to be carried to the literal edge with her. Miriam, thank you so much for trusting us with your work. I'm so happy that this piece found a home at Sand, and I am thrilled to hear you share your reading here tonight. So without further ado, help me in welcoming Miriam McEwen with her reading of We Are Not Love Machines.
Hi, I'm hugely honored to be in the company of such amazing artists today. This is We Are Not Love Machines. Your internet boyfriend's name is Wendell, and if you had known ahead of time that he was going to use your first real-life date as an excuse to lead you deep into the woods behind his apartment complex, you probably would not have come today. Your power wheelchair is not exactly built for this sort of terrain. He's taking you to what he says is a secret waterfall, fairly accessible, he says, and he keeps wanting you to stop, wanting you to notice how fresh and green everything looks after that hard rain last night. And do you see that? That's mountain laurel. Have you ever seen anything as beautiful in your life as mountain laurel? But you've stopped agreeing with Wendell that the mountain laurel is beautiful, and you've given up on reminding him that you're from around here too. So it's not like you're unfamiliar with the local flora and fauna. You just have to concentrate on your driving right now and avoid getting your wheels too bogged down or flying off into a ravine. You are beginning to wonder what you saw in him online. He never shuts up. He keeps going on about mountain laurel as though he's the one who discovered it. He smells of peppermint and frozen dinners, and the combination makes you want to gag. You are desperately trying to remember the words from his messages these past few months, the ones which led you to believe he was methodical and shy about love, words with a quirky humor you can't quite put your finger on. Hello, my goddess. Thanks for being so cool while I planned the perfect day for us. Base jumping, anyone? Just kidding. Can you imagine? No. But seriously, we humans are not pure love machines, and I would hate to doom us from the start with a sloppy first date. You understand. What you do not immediately understand is why Wendell has come to a dead halt in front of you. But your wheelchair has no real traction on this incline, and you feel yourself slowly rocking from side to side in a way you know can't be safe. You're already staring intently at an orange-capped mushroom in the ground. You are preparing to skid off the trail and slam your pretty head against a tree. You are really hoping people will think of your head as pretty after you're gone because you are preparing to die. You are absolutely preparing to die when Wendell reaches for the handlebar closest to him and manages to steer the unwieldy chair away from danger. He's talking to you now. He might even be yelling a little. His eyes are very green. You hadn't noticed before how green his eyes are. Nothing he's saying is making any sense. You wish he would kiss you. He's your boyfriend, isn't he? But then he pops you hard on the cheek once and you hear him say, "You're being super careless, my angel. The waterfall is just up ahead, but I don't trust you to drive the rest of the way. Besides, the little bridge is out." You look over his shoulder at a deluge of red-brown water as it pounds its way downstream. Only a mess of fractured timber remains, and you nod your head to confirm, yes, the bridge is out. You even think he might be waiting for a verbal confirmation, but it's too late. Wendell has scooped you out of your seat and is cradling you against his possibly ironic Spice Girls t-shirt. His smell isn't so bad, you guess. You are overreacting. You just need to relax. You just need to close your eyes for a minute. Wendell's got you. You're almost to the waterfall. It's breathtaking, this view. Keep your eyes closed tight now. Don't open them. Just wait until he sits you up on that ledge and you look down. You won't know what hit you. Hey, thank you so much, and be sure to go to sandjournal.com to get your copy of Sand 23.
Hello again, and thank you so much, Miriam, for that lovely reading. We are so excited to have the opportunity to celebrate readings from Sand 23 with our international audience tonight. And we're also very thankful to the contributors who read at our launch in Berlin, which was such a joy to celebrate after almost 2 years without physical literary events. I'd like to say a big thanks to those Berlin launch readers now. Creative nonfiction writer Nikita Ajarakor, poet Winifred Wong, fiction writer Gurmeet Singh, artist Tabitha Swanson, and poet and flash fiction writer Lizzie Yarwood. Thank you so much for trusting us with your work and for providing such a great atmosphere at the launch in November. We'd also love to share some impressions of our launch in Berlin with you before we move on to our next set of readers tonight. So, up next, we have a short selection of photos from the SAN 23 Berlin launch. After this presentation, Grace will be back to tell you more about tonight's poetry contest and to introduce our second group of readers for tonight. We hope you enjoyed these impressions from the SAN 23 launch in Berlin.
We hope you feel inspired by the work we're featuring tonight and all of the pieces in issue 23. If it seems your creative juices are flowing, participate in our Poetry to Cope contest. At our in-person launch in November, we invited our guests to share their coping mechanisms with us. Everything from prayer to dancing to sushi to Joni Mitchell. Click on the link in the description to this video, where you'll find a full list of coping mechanisms to choose from. For this contest, we'll ask you to create a poem based on one or more of the coping mechanisms you find. To make it a little trickier, we ask that your poem be a maximum of 23 words. Submit your poems at contest@sandjournal.com by Sunday, the 13th of February at midnight. The winner will receive a free digital copy of any SAND issue of their choice, and we'll publish a selection of our favorite contest entries on our social media. One of the silver linings we've discovered in the last 2 years is the way we've delved into the possibilities of the virtual sphere. Not only are we able to connect with our broader community across the globe, we're able to connect in totally new ways. We were so excited to be able to host our webinar series in poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction in 2021 and January 2022. We would like to thank the audience members who took part in these webinars, all of the proceeds of which go directly to paying the writers and artists we publish. If you didn't catch the webinars the first time around, you can still watch our webinars on Secrets to Standout Submissions, Writing Effective First Pages, which includes live critiques of participant first pages, Writing Experimental Fiction, and Keeping New Year's Writing Resolutions, available for a small donation at crowdcast.io/sandjournal. Up next, we have junior fiction editor Sienna Powers introducing Ruth Martin and her translated work. We'll then get an intro from Krista Siglin, one of SAN's poetry editors, for our first poet of the evening, Sihle Ntuli.
Hi everyone, my name is Sienna Powers and I'm the second fiction editor here at SAND. I'm delighted to introduce our next piece, an excerpt from the novel Sisters in Arms, written by Sihle Ntuli and translated from German by Ruth Martin. Sihle Ntuli studied creative writing and arts journalism in Heidelsheim and works as an educational advisor for young people interested in doing a year of voluntary environmental work. Her debut novel, Nachts ist es leise in Teheran, At Night It's Quiet in Tehran, was published in 2016. She has received scholarships from the Klagenfurt Literaturkurs and the Heinrich Böll Foundation. Ruth Martin studied English literature before gaining a PhD in German. She has been translating fiction and nonfiction since 2010 by authors ranging from Joseph Roth and Hannah Arendt to Nino Hiratashvili and Volker Weidermann. Ruth has taught translation to undergraduates at Birkbeck and the University of Kent. This excerpt of Sisters in Arms immediately drops you into the reunion of three friends, lovingly and also carefully playing out the roles of long-term friendship. Through the observational power of the narrator and the magnetic personality of Saya, the story expresses with clarity the weight of custom and language in each action. We are so happy to have gotten the opportunity to publish this translation, and it is especially exciting for us to be trusted with great work coming out of our home city of Berlin. So without more, thank you and welcome, Ruth.
Hi, this is an excerpt from Sisters in Arms. I smiled at him, and it was just a nice smile, clearly not flirtatious. And he smiled back at me, and it clearly was flirtatious. And he spoke to me, Saya said, passing the beer bottles to us, in English. In English, I laughed, taking the 2 bottles and passing one to Hanny. How considerate. Hanny laughed as well, albeit a little uncertainly, gave the bottle back to me, and held out her lighter. The only smoker out of the 3 of us, she had the necessary equipment, but no idea how to open a bottle with it. I gave her the open bottle back, clinked mine against it, and said, I bet he had a thick German accent as well. I imitated a thick German accent by saying something in English. I did it twice in a row, so that we could clink bottles and giggle twice, an initial awkward giggle, the kind you let out when you've laughed together plenty before, but haven't seen each other for a long time. His English not only had a thick German accent, it was also full of mistakes, of course, Saya went on, resting her chin on her bent knees and looking out over the city. That's the most embarrassing thing about these people who think they have to speak English to us. They can't even do it. It's okay to speak bad English, though, isn't it? Said Honey, whose English wasn't so good either, of course. And to be honest, nor was mine. Honey's wasn't good because she'd been to a bad school, and in my case, it was because I'd never needed it before I moved to this city, where it was good manners to start speaking English straight away when a foreigner came to hang out with you. Saya's English was world-class. She'd only found a use for it after school too, but then she'd travelled around the world with it, lived in this metropolis and that, had relationships, done a degree. No one has to be able to speak English, I know that, she said now. But that's the really weird thing about these people. If you're not that good at something, then you wait and see if you actually need to do it or not, don't you? You don't just start babbling away at poor defenceless people. Guys like him think our German must be so non-existent that their abysmal English is a better way to communicate with us. And what did he say? I asked. Did you answer in German? No way, said Saya. The flight was an hour and a half, and he was sitting right next to me. If I'd answered in German, I would have had to talk to him for longer. I said in English that my English wasn't very good. And then he just looked really sympathetic and smiled. And what if he was simply a nice person and was just trying to accommodate you, Hanny asked, looking out at the city too, or rather over it, as if somewhere beyond its roofs and church towers lay the proof that people only ever mean well. You were on a plane, after all. You never know who comes from where. He might have spoken to you in German if he'd met you on the street. I'm sure he just wanted to chat. Yeah, whatever, but this story isn't over yet, said Saya. And if you want to hear the rest of Saya's story and loads of other great stuff, head to sandjournal.com to order your copy of Sand 23.
Hi, I'm Krista Siglin, one of the poetry editors at Sand. I'm pleased to introduce our next reader for issue 23 virtual launch. Sihle Ntuli is a poet and classicist from Durban. He holds a Master of Arts degree in Classical Civilizations and has lectured previously at the University of the Free State. He is the author of Rumblin', released in 2020, and has had work published in notable publications such as Lowe and The Rumpus. His poetry was shortlisted for the Dalro Poetry Prize in 2017. He currently lives in Durban. When we first encountered Sihle's piece, we were so taken by how quiet and exacting it was, and how the contrapuntal layout offered a lot of different possibilities, and yet had this sort of stillness to it. And we're so pleased to be able to have Sihle here with us today to read his work.
Robin, third floor. In relationships with people, high hope is the third floor, the point of entry from a level of connection, once euphoric, a fundamental truth of a short-lived thing. Relying on it is like renting a room in your own mind, a misdirection from the highest floor, a place called limbo, where there are no doors, the second floor on the way down, inside of discomfort, a step down, the descent from a higher place. And this situation is the gravitas pulling you down, an entry into the open, a point of departure towards the ground floor.
Thank you both so much for those readings and for submitting your work to SAND and giving us the opportunity to publish it. I want to say a special congratulations to Sihle Ntuli, as the original German language version of Sisters in Arms was longlisted for the prestigious German Book Prize 2021. We are so happy that her work has been recognized by such an important prize, and we are so grateful that Ruth trusted us with her translated excerpt of the novel. SAND is actually the first publication to ever publish excerpts from the piece in English, and we couldn't be more thrilled. If we were all in the same room tonight, you'd be able to head over to the book table about now and peruse an issue of SAND at your leisure. So before we hear from our last set of readers for the evening, we wanted to give you the virtual experience of flipping through the issue, which is beautifully designed by our designer, Deborah Louise-Seri. After this virtual preview, Grace will be back to introduce our last set of readers for the night. Enjoy!
We're so happy to be able to offer this event free of charge and keep it accessible for everyone. If you're enjoying coping and want to support SAND, what we do, and the creators we publish, there are a number of ways to help. Small donations and purchases of current and past issues of SAND help independent literary journals like ours keep running and ensure that we can pay all our contributors for their hard work. Thank you. Up next, we have SAND's creative nonfiction editor, Melissa Richer, with an introduction to our next reader, Keegan Lawler, and then the other half of SAND's journal poetry team, poetry editor Anna Lawson, will introduce poet Maeve McKenna. Finally, Krista is back to introduce our final poet, William Lessard.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Melissa, and I am the creative nonfiction editor at SAND. I'm here to introduce Keegan Lawler, who will be reading from his piece, A Litany for Stolen Men in 3 Attempts. This is a flash nonfiction piece, which is also a hybrid work. Keegan writes hybrid work and also nonfiction, fiction, and poetry. He's currently working on a memoir, and his work also appears in multiple journals, including the Los Angeles Review and Homology Lit. Keegan is originally from Idaho and currently lives in Washington State with his partner, their 2 basset hounds, and cat. I'm so glad that he's joining us, and here he is.
Hi, this is a litany for stolen men in 3 attempts. 1. Praise be to stolen men. Praise be to your legs, how they carry, heave, lovers against brick walls under dim lights. Praise to your hips, how they learned grinding, pounding in hushed tones. Praise to your buttocks, how they bounce, love, slam. Praise to your backs, praise to your posture still perfectly straight under all that weight. Praise be to your blood, no need to purify, carrying all the brief air pulled through a hole in a plastic bag, your faces forced to walls. Praise be to God, praise be to you. 2. Chechnya, 2017. Take its name, time, from a bouquet of violence. Boys who, like boys, can always be stolen. Our legs, hips, buttocks, and backs sacrificed for laws, gods we never understood. Listen to their bones in mass graves, burning pits, unmarked graves, stolen bodies, names, lives. I always hear reasons for praise. 3. Praise, 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 praise. Thank you.
For our next reader, I'm delighted to introduce Maeve McKenna. Maeve is a poet and writer based in rural Sligo, Ireland. She's poetry editor for Type House magazine, and her work can be found in publications including Dyslexia, Orbis, China Magazine, and the Highbury Journal. This month, on the 18th of February, her first pamphlet, A Dedication to Drowning, is coming out, published by Fly on the Wall Press, so go check that out. We'll add a link to it. We're thrilled to be publishing Maeve's poem, Gerard's, in Sun 23. It's a dizzying piece that holds the reader, or listener in this case, by the scruff of the neck and doesn't let go. For me, reading Gerard's feels like looking through a sharp focus, but by no means a motionless lens, not only at an instant, but at the mind's frantic, circling reactions, constructing or reconstructing this portrait of a personal life and web of relationships through this rush of fragments. Welcome, Maeve.
Hi, this is Gerard's. Gerard's under a rubbish truck. Gerard hanging from the 2nd floor balcony, syringes stuck to chewing gum on the chalked stones below. Gerard's face reversed in the wing mirror of a debt-paid Yamaha 125, falling like his mother's wedding ring into the pawn shop, falling with no feeling of loss as his shin bone punctures the ulcerated crater of pus, the bulging mass on Gerard's acneed forehead, dangling over his gouged nose lining, his sniffling mid-facial erosion. Gerard's head hitting the continuous white line, smack, but no smack. A mob of grey and white gulls with fluorescent orange beaks, like couriers arriving with party pizzas, circling the scene with winged antennae. City radars for guts. Gerard's bottom lip split and 2 front teeth vanished into the swollen red collision of flesh. Gerard, who French kissed so good with those lips, who said, "Come here, come on, please." Gerard, who held my hand on that first trip to the Gurrier Soul, who stole words of violence from our alley mouths, made them accents of peace for a night. Jared's finger severed by that gold wedding ring. Jared who worked, had a paycheck on Fridays. Jared who didn't smoke cigarettes. There, a heap on the road, in bits under the exhaust, finger twitching over at the dried out manhole. Jared's father wheeling the rims of a motorbike home months later, after the hospital, after the debt came back from the wheelie bin ghost boys behind the Jervis shopping centre. Jared in recovery on a frame, Jared gone again, Jared in cable ties, Jared revving his body into the ground, leg missing, finger too, Jared's gorgeous grey lips and the yellow bulb over his blue smile, Jared nailing happy dying face, Jared's bandaged wrists, punctured forearms, pinhole tracks, Jared's tattoos, his lovely granny dead in blurry ink on his arm. Jared's ma there too. Thank you very much. Please head over to sandjournal.com to order your copy of Sand 23. It's a fantastic issue. The inspiration for this poem was a guy I used to know when I was younger, who life became very difficult for. And I tried to capture that. He was a good person. And I hope that comes through in the poem. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Krista Siglin. I'm one of the poetry editors at Sand Journal, and I'm very pleased to introduce from issue 23, William Lessard. William Lessard has writing that has appeared or is forthcoming in American Poetry Review, Best American Experimental Writing, Fence, and the Southwest Review. He is poetry and hybrids editor at Heavy Feather Review. And we were so pleased to see his piece in the submissions stack. We were immediately excited and confounded by it and wanted to publish it pretty immediately. Its content and medium feel so seamlessly intertwined, and we were so curious as to how it was going to be read, and I'm so pleased to be able to have him representing his own work today, and I'm excited for you to hear it. Thank you.
This is Decision Trees versus Random Forest, Mind Map number 2. He plucked syllables from the air, usually with 2 fingers, in a single pinching motion. But sometimes he grabbed with the anger you grab a fly that's been circling your head. The syllables holding a nectar that raise thunderbolts in his vein. Their tendril downstroke touching the lip of lip, and he'd have them. Their cursive habiliment warming his palm as he tore away fricatives and sibilants and all rogue linguals, unafraid of looking him in the eye.
While we're so delighted to be launching issue 23, we're always looking ahead. Our next issue will be launching this summer, so keep an eye out. To wrap up our event, we'd really like to thank our contributors one more time. That's Larissa Fantini, Miriam McEwen, Ruth Martin, Sihle Ntuli, Keegan Lawler, Maeve McKenna, William Lessard, and all the contributors of issue 23. We'd like to thank you again for trusting us with your work and for knowing that Sand is the right home for your writing and artwork. We'd also like to give a big shout out to the team who have created, promoted, and internationally distributed Sand 23. That's Jake Schneider, Ruby Mason, Matthew Deary, Deborah Louis-Seri, Ruhi Amin, Ashley Moore, Krista Siglin, Emma C. Lawson, Melissa Richer, Sienna Powers, Francesca Ferruto, Natalia Dumont, Will Stokes, our Varine coordinator, Christina Wegner, and the other half of the Sand Events team, Anna Nenadovich. And big thanks to new team members who are currently creating Sand 24, Aliyah Zaparova and Sarah Anwar. Don't forget to follow us on your preferred social media platforms. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter for regular updates from the team. Stay tuned. Finally, you can submit your poem Coping until Wednesday at midnight CET, and the winners will be emailed and announced by the end of the week. As always, we'd like to remind you to support your local bookshops. You can find bookshops that support Sand at sandjournal.com/shop-sand-bookstores. You can also buy us from anywhere in the world online. Thank you so much for being here and for participating in this virtual event. On behalf of Anna and I and the whole Sand team, thank you for joining us and have a great night. Hello and welcome to our third virtual launch event. We were very happy to host our first in-person launch since 2019 for this issue in November.